and welcome to our fourth and final Cageuary Special of 2022. Fear not, we will return with more cagey goodness throughout the year with some extra special anniversary episodes. And I'm sure he'll have plenty of films to cover this year, so we will be speaking about Cage a few more times this year. Don't worry, it's not just relegated to January's, but let's talk about this episode. I have the fantastic Jordan Gray on to talk about, I just floated out an idea, said, do you want to come talk about a Nicolas Cage film? And she said to me, yeah, I'd love to talk about Lord of War. And I thought, you know what? I love Lord of War. I think it's a great film. Let's talk about Lord of War. It's been a while since I'd seen it, and I remember really enjoying it. I, much to my chagrin, again, listened back to the first episode I did on it. And like all of them, I always go, oh, I'll probably miss this. I didn't dive into the fact that it's based on a real guy. I didn't go into some of the, I don't know, some of the feelings and kind of things that it made me feel. So this was a great, like all these kind of revisits, is a great opportunity to, now I'm wiser about cinema itself, why I'm better as a podcaster, and I don't know, just having a bit more life experience to kind of project onto these films or see things in these films that I didn't see the first time. I obviously get to see them this time. So as much as you may think, hey, you've covered this on the podcast before, as I said, all these revisits, it's a totally new conversation. And that episode of Lord of War was 5 years ago. So it's 4 years ago. So it's going to be a lot has changed in my life. So there's and I'm speaking to someone about it. First time it was just me. This time, as I said, it's me and the fantastic Jordan Gray. We will be talking about this film in spoilerific detail. So if you haven't seen it, go and watch it. I'm sure you'll be able to find it. You'll be able to rent it pretty cheap. It was on Netflix, but I believe it's been taken off here in the UK. But I'm sure it's floating about there somewhere. Definitely check it out and listen to this episode. If not, just listen to the episode. I don't know. It's spoilerific, but it's still a fun episode. So I guess all that's left to do is to sell some Uzis, lie to your friends and family about what you actually do, exploit the ending of the Cold War, and get raging with Cage. This week, we're taking another look at Andrew Niccol's 2005 crime drama Lord of War, based on the life of Viktor Bout, an elusive arms dealer who supplied weapons for nearly every conflict this side of 1990 until his arrest in 2008. This film stars our boy Nicolas Cage, Ethan Hawke, Jared Leto, Bridget Monahan, and Ian Holm. To join me in the seedy world of arms dealing, and to see if this film is armed to the teeth with greatness or is firing blanks, is comedian, musician, and actor Jordan Gray. How are you, Jordan?
I'm very well, thanks. That's a proper podcast intro, by the way. I'm so... you said I'd be G'd up. I'm so G'd up. This feels I'm in the world of your podcast now, and I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I during lockdown got really bored and created a keyboard. Is just sounds of Nicolas Cage, and I was like, I really need to utilize this into some. And it was kind of like, you know, when there was that stage in lockdown when everybody was like really productive and doing stuff, and then there was me over here just getting clips from Nicolas Cage, like screaming in films and stuff like that, and assigning them to keys on a keyboard like a madman.
There was that period of time where everyone was, oh yeah, this is the time to do it. This is to whatever you were going to do it now. So I started writing a novel. I thought, oh, this is the time to do it. I'll start writing a book. And then like about 2 weeks later, the internet flipped 180 and everyone's posting, you know, this is the time to think about your mental health. Just take it back down a notch. Don't worry so much. I'm like, whoa. You convinced me to put my life on hold to write a book. I'm trying really hard here. Don't take this away from me.
Yeah.
But I will say that my book never came out, whereas that intro is out there for the world to see. So which one
Oh,
of us is winning? I think it's you.
oh, thank you very much. Well, Jordan, before we talk about the film in question, which is Lord of War, um, let's find out. Are you a Nicolas Cage fan? It seems bizarre to come on a Nicolas Cage podcast without being a Nicolas Cage fan, but how big a fan are you?
I expect, put up against your other guest, I'm probably a middling fan, but in real world, in a world where other celebrities exist, I'll say I'm a big fan. I love the man. I think he's fantastic, and I'm along for the ride. So I'm happy to be critical of his work. I don't hero worship the man,
Mhm.
but there's not much. There's nothing of his that I would switch off or turn over. If it's on, I enjoy his work. And if we want to talk about trivia, I suppose I do all right in a quiz, but I'm not on like instant recall terms with all the directors of his films, for example, stuff like that. I just I could quote him, and I do a passable Nicolas Cage impression for. I'm a stand-up comedian and have a bit which we could talk about later. Potentially, he was rumored to have appeared as to be appearing as Joe Exotic in a dramatized version of the Tiger King. Now that may have been just a very spurious rumor, but it didn't stop me from making a whole bit about it for my set. So I had to learn how to do Nicolas Cage, which I learned, as most impressionists learn, from another impressionist, and it was Danny Pooty from Community.
Mhm.
Does an amazing Nicolas Cage in an episode of Community, and most people, including myself, got my impression from watching Danny Pooty do it.
Yeah, he's got an amazing one, and Simon Helberg from The Big Bang Theory does an absolute blinding Nicolas Cage
Oh,
impression.
really?
Yeah, so I recently listened to the audiobook of Seth Rogen's like memoir yearbook, and
Oh, right.
he actually pulls in people like a lot of the time. If it's his parents talking or his sister or his wife, he actually got them to record their voices, and Judd Apatow pops up and loads of other people. And there's a couple of stories in there about Nick Cage, and he got Simon Helberg to come in and record the voice of Nicolas Cage, and it is just absolutely like it's perfect. It's like you feel like, especially the stories that they are, because they're I don't know, they paint Nicolas Cage in a light that he is a fallible human who kind of has those days of self doubt like the rest of us. That I guess I don't know, from an outsider's perspective, looking at Nicolas Cage, you almost think like he seems like this weird ethereal man who kind of like lives, I don't know, on a different plane to the rest of us and is doing whatever the fuck Nicolas Cage wants to do. So to kind of hear this story where it's like he's riddled with self-doubt about, I think it was, do you remember the Green Hornet film that Seth Rogen was in?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Nicolas Cage was in talks to play the bad guy and wanted to do the role as a white Rasta.
Yeah, yeah. There's that level of confidence where all morals sort of go out the window. Be like, no, it'll be okay if I do it. I'll be able to handle it. Don't worry, and it will change the world.
Well, his
Oh, bless him.
I think his beef was that James Franco then kind of played a somewhat like a guy who affected like black culture in Spring Breakers, and like Nicolas Cage contacted Seth Rogen to be like, "Did you tell James Franco about me wanting to play that character as a white Rasta?"
Oh man, he's another one, isn't he? James Franco is kind of he's broken on through to the other side.
Oh,
He's got a lot of confidence, but he does deliver.
yeah. I think he's a bad guy though, isn't he, James Franco? He's an actual
I've heard problematic
yeah.
things. I
He's
forgot about that. I was getting confused. Because of I often in my mind confuse James Franco with Jared Leto. Very rarely, but occasionally I do. And since he's in this film, I'm glad that you pointed that out, because now I remember Jared Leto's a nice man, and we're allowed to talk about him unless something else comes out. But
yeah.
as far as I know, Jared Leto's a not problematic, sort of quite nice man.
Yeah, a very self-serious man who like loves an accent, as we found out in 2021 with the House of Gucci, but not a bad man. So
Yeah.
we're all good on Jared Leto. So yeah, we've gone down an avenue that I didn't expect us to go, talking about James Franco. But what would have been the first Nicolas Cage film you reckon you would have seen, Jordan?
I reckon I'm a lifelong Marvel. I am a long Marvel fan. Don't matter if it's good or bad. I reckon probably most seems quite late. 33-year-old person. So is that quite late to see?
Ghost Rider would have come out in like 2006.
Post Spider-Man. That was a teenager, so maybe a little bit earlier. I remember though, Lord of War being the first time I saw what I thought was grown up. Like not in necessarily, I'd seen ruder things, bad language. But it's the first time I've watched and enjoyed like this grown up genre, this war genre, crime, which I avoided. So that might really have been the first occasion. I'm not worried about the boring facts. I'm worried about the interesting facts. But yeah, the actual date of the film release.
2005, I believe. Yeah, so it would have been the year
2005.
before.
Maybe it was Lord of War then. So that's
So let's talk about Ghost Rider. What were your first impressions of that film, and kind of like did Nicolas Cage leave like a lasting impression that you wanted to check out more of his stuff?
yeah, it's great. Like also because it's a superhero film that completely took a completely different direction. Most superhero films of that time, Spider-Man being kicking off a lot of it, and I suppose Blade proper kicking it off, but of such a different certificate that it was not in my scope. I didn't see Blade until I was old enough to see it. All the other superhero films, they tried to justify the science behind the character, and then Ghost Rider comes along, and it's Nicolas Cage who turns into a skeleton and his head sets on fire. I'm like, whoa! So it's fine. So anything's fine for a movie now. Great, okay. And I don't know, he seems like he's having a good time in it.
Yeah.
Like, he's of an age where a leather jacket meant cool, like meant rock star.
Yeah.
So he's in a movie where he gets to wear a leather jacket and ride a motorcycle. It's like, I bet he's loving it.
I like the fact that film, you imagine it's a Nick Cageism as well, that his character like drinks jelly beans out of a martini glass, and that's like his thing. I think it's M&Ms, and it's like you'd imagine he's probably come to the director and been like, I've been thinking about this character. I think this is what he would do. He would drink M&Ms out of a martini glass.
Yeah, he's subverting the whole thing, definitely. No, yeah, you're right. I reckon that's what he's done. Yeah, he had a good time on that set. And when you're doing basically a lot of stuff where you're not present for most of your character's hero's journey, when most of you is CGI, yeah, he's just squeezing on all the fun that he could have had while he was there.
Yeah, what's interesting about that one as opposed to the sequel is he didn't do any of the like Ghost Rider stuff. That was all a stuntman, whereas like the second one, and there's like amazing footage out there of him doing the Ghost Rider stuff, but like he decided to put on like kabuki makeup, so he's got this kind of real like gnarly looking like skeleton makeup he's done himself, and he's there like screaming
Right.
at people, and then obviously they've just like CGI'd over the top like with the flaming skeleton skull.
Yeah. To give people something to act next to, or for his own amusement, or like, yeah, why?
I think it was so like
Like
obviously he understood the character a bit more as well. Whereas like if you're kind of playing just if you're a character with that dual personality, if you're only getting to play the bits when you're not the flaming skull demon from hell, and you're just playing the normal bloke, I imagine it's probably like a bit jarring to be like, what does it feel like to really like just wig out? And I guess I guess the directors of that one as well, it's the same guys who did the Crank film, so I imagine they were probably all gung ho for that idea of like, let Nick do as much as he wants to do. Whether if he wants to ride a motorbike, fuck it, let's get on our rollerblades and follow him with a camera.
Imagine if of all the people, like Ghost Rider there was no motorbike in that film before Nicolas Cage came along. I think it's this guy will ride a motorcycle. Like, it's Ghost Rider. Yeah, why didn't we think of that?
So what is your favourite Nick Cage film, Jordan?
I really like. I love him in Kick-Ass, and I know he steals. I think he steals it. He's post is he or isn't he a weird guy kind of acting. He's like a spoiler if you've not seen it. When he dies, he does this, like, it's seared into everyone's brains that's ever heard it, when he's screaming for his daughter. It's like, baby doll, and I will never not hear that every single time I see the cover. And it's the weirdest choice. It's such a weird choice. That was not my impression of Nicolas Cage, by the way. That was just me screaming baby doll. It's such an odd choice. But it's so moving with the score. And I sometimes think, I wonder if he's hearing all the score in his head while he's doing it. And that's why, because on set, no one's going to go, oh, can we do that again? Because he clearly gave 200% of himself in that scream. No one on set would have gone, can we try that again? They've gone, right, we're just going to have to work with this. But in his head, he's got the musical score. He's going to be like, this is amazing. This is just going to juxtapose really well with what's going on. He's great in that. So yeah.
He's got some amazing line deliveries when he says, switch to kryptonite. He just, like, everything has got like this amazing inflections on it. And what is like a really weirdly beautiful moment in that film is him applying the makeup of, like, because you never see it, you never saw well, I guess until like the new Batman that's coming out, like there was never that, it was never clearly stated that Batman wears eye makeup. Like, you never saw him, like, putting on, do you know what I mean, the dark eye makeup around his eyes to kind of get that really mysterious look. Whereas as Big Daddy, Nicolas Cage, you have that scene of him, like, applying it all and doesn't he put on, like, he's got a mustache anyway, but then he puts, like, little extenders on the tash to make him look a bit more menacing, like, kind of turn it a bit handlebar instead.
I never thought of that, but you're so right. And that's the whole premise of that film, is what are the practical limitations of being a superhero. So yeah, that's so good that they included stuff like that. That's my favorite Nicolas Cage film, but probably by quite a lot as well, actually. He's large, ironically he's larger than life in that show about what it's like to be a real person.
Yeah, I like, and I definitely think, I don't know, they tried to replicate somewhat in the sequel by getting Jim Carrey, but it doesn't quite hit. Do you know what I mean? A kind of another character who is larger than life and kind of has this, I don't like, Nicolas Cage is known for wigging out on screen, and what Jim Carrey's like the rubber-faced maniac from all those films in the 90s. So,
yeah, there's different kinds of there's different explosions of weirdness, and you can't group them all together. You imagine just superficially transposing Nicolas Cage and Jim Carrey in any of Jim Carrey's weirdest roles. It's not necessarily going to work. Like Nicolas Cage playing the new Dr. Robotnik in the new Sonic the Hedgehog movie. I just can't.
I think it would be sinister. It would be. I think it would be much more sinister. I'm trying to think, like,
the darker film. Yeah,
Nicolas Cage in Liar Liar. All of a sudden, it becomes like a 15, and it's a lot more like, it's a lot darker than it is this kind of weird. I don't know. I can imagine Nicolas Cage actually fully, like, throwing himself against the mirror in that bathroom scene and, like, bleeding and stuff like that. Whereas...
Oh my god, I forgot. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, that'd be dark. I don't know how Jim Carrey can turn himself up to 11 and it not freak everybody out though as well. We're like, oh, Jim, when he is actually schismed his personality and he's fighting himself and smashing himself in the face, we're all like, oh, what a lark. Yeah, it's just, what silly Jim. If anyone else is doing that, we'd say they've gone too far into their character.
Yeah, well, I think there's a perfect portrayal of that in the documentary Jim and Andy, where he played
amazing.
Andy Kaufman, and kind of took it to the the nth degree right on what it is to be in character, and really tested the patience of everybody on that set.
That was it. That is an incredible historic piece of film. That's
Yes.
so good.
Right. Well, let's talk about Lord of War. But before we do, here's the trailer.
There are over 550 million firearms in worldwide circulation. That's one firearm for every 12 people on the planet. The only question is, how do we arm the other 11?
Selling guns is like selling vacuum cleaners. You make calls, pound the pavement. I supply to every army but the Salvation Army.
Can you bring me the gun of Rambo?
Part 1, 2, or 3?
I've only seen part 1.
By the mid-'80s, my weapons were represented in 8 of the world's top 10 war zones.
Damn, you are good.
You get rich by giving the poorest people on the planet the means to continue killing each other.
Guys!
Say what you like about warlords and dictators, they always pay their bills on time.
I would tell you to go to hell, but I think you're already there.
This is your plane?
I'm in transport.
That's what I want.
She doesn't know how you pay for all this.
We don't talk about it. How many car salesmen talk about their work?
I'm not saying I didn't have setbacks.
There are men going through our garbage cans. Is there anything I should be worried about?
No, nothing.
The first and most important rule of gun running is never get shot with your own merchandise.
Is everything okay?
Rough day at the office.
We're the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms.
Let me guess, this isn't about the alcohol or the tobacco.
Where there's a will, there's a weapon.
You know, they call me the Lord of War, but perhaps it is you.
It's Warlord.
Thank you, but I prefer it my way. Is this how you want to be remembered?
I don't want to be remembered at all.
So let's talk about the first time you saw this film, Jordan, and your impressions of it.
That was such a gear change. Oh my god, you just you just came in at such a gear change. Sorry, please continue. Go for it.
Yeah. So what were your first impressions of this film when you first saw it, and what made you pick it for the podcast?
Right. So yeah, as I just briefly alluded to, I think this was the first time I watched a film that was, to me, as a grown-up genre. I was not a preteen. I was probably just a teenager when I first saw it, and it didn't have people shooting lasers out their eyes or anything, and it wasn't National Treasure. It was like a proper grown-up look. And these types of films where you don't really need to know the political intricacies of what's going on to enjoy the general plot. It's also a beautiful looking film. The cinematography is amazing. And the soundtrack from the very start, well, 30 seconds, you got the intro where he's standing there and he sort of says the premise of the film, and also signals to us that he's going to be narrating the film pretty much. And then I think it's time we stop, children, watch that sound. And from then, every single song choice is amazing. And that stuck with me because I was a musician for 10 years, and a movie with a good soundtrack stays in my heart, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Well, I always like to ask my guests on the podcast to give us a brief synopsis of the film. So, Jordan, what is Lord of War about?
Lord of War is it's based on actual events, and until you said it earlier, I wasn't sure that it was about one specific man. But so it's based on the real life. Nicolas Cage plays Yuri Orlov, a Ukrainian immigrant who rises through the ranks of gun running to supply basically the excess guns from the Cold War to the world. He becomes one of the world's biggest gun runners, and it's all the trials and tribulations that come with that, and trying to balance a family. and it's got Jared Leto in it, and it's bloody good film.
You saying about that aspect of like trying to balance a family, I think that is the aspect that isn't based on the true story. And even then, like, it's only slightly, it's taken from Viktor Bout, who was, yeah, as I said in that intro, a guy who did a lot of this, like did kind of take advantage of the Cold War situation and using the surplus weapons, and kind of was somewhat of an enigma until this film came out. And I think that's quite fascinating. And his wife said when he eventually got prosecuted, to he only got 25 years, I think, in the end, which, for when you think about like the kind
Oh
of
wow.
the comparable stuff he did, and what Ethan Hawke's character says, like, you will be prosecuted for countless amounts of life sentences for what you've done. Like, yeah, he only got that. And his wife said, you didn't try my husband today, you tried Nicolas Cage in Lord of War. It, like, because it was this film that led to the like conviction basically of him, for them to, because it was announced, I guess, in the press notes, and it's out there online that says it's inspired by Viktor Bout. They kind of started to really close in on this guy, and I think it was 2008 he got arrested in Thailand and then extradited to America to kind of pay for the crimes. And I think even then it was only because he started dealing weapons against America, basically, was why the boot came down on Viktor Bout.
Just bad just bad timing. Like, oh wow. So yeah, just the what do they call it when it's like a passion plea or something, where the press's involvement skews the results of the case. You can kind of have that overturned, can't you? But it's a very difficult thing to do, because once you're emotionally attached to something. So yeah, they're all thinking, oh, he was horrible to his beauty queen wife. Oh, and he was. Do you remember when he gave Jared Leto some cocaine in Taxi? Oh, what a horrible man Viktor Bout is. Oh no. Oh well.
Yeah.
Yes, I suppose same as like what's his name from Wolf of Wall Street? Jordan Peterson. Belford. I had no idea who that man was until that film. I knew the goings on, but I'd never heard of the man. Can you imagine now? It's inextricable from Leo now.
Yeah, I think like that's a film I remember really tussling with in my mind, because it's got a cameo from the real Jordan Belfort. So I was like, is this like,
oh right, at the end?
Yeah, and it's one of those films where like I really wrestled with the idea. It's like, is this glorifying that lifestyle? Especially like having the actual guy in there is like getting that like endorsement right at the end of like, this is like, do you know what I mean? He's all right. He's now like a kind of what is he? He's like a self-help guru basically now, isn't he? Yeah. So like, yeah, and he did some real shady shit.
Definitely glorified. It's like when autobiographies always have. Like I remember reading Marilyn Manson's autobiography, and on the back it very clearly says for entertainment purposes only. So, and that works. That goes both ways. So there's stuff that was super shady that is like, oh no, that didn't happen. That's for entertainment purposes only, in inverted commas. And then there's some stuff that they could just aggrandize and make up and exaggerate for entertainment purposes. So we're not sure if it happened or not, if he's trying to look cool or if he's just trying to get away with stuff. But if it's for entertainment, then yeah, Jordan Belfort's life is now like it's like we've hyper normalized it. We're like, oh, it can't be that crazy because it was in a film.
Yeah.
So it's fine. But maybe he did do it.
And it's that thing of like how different people read films, right? Because I imagine some people watch a film like this, and Wolf of Wall Street is a great comparison. I guess there is a Martin Scorsese like vibe to this film. It kind of reminds me, watching it, of like Goodfellas and stuff like that. I think in the way that it moves at a pace, and it's fast and loose with the passage of time. Like all of a sudden it's like it's 1983, then it's 1989, then it's 91. It's like we're getting the whole like scope of this person's life, and we're kind of and it's got an amazing soundtrack, like you said. It's kind of, it feels like Andrew Niccol is like, I'm gonna dip into the Martin Scorsese bag. But yeah, I find it interesting in regards to like how people perceive like films. Like there'll be I guess a great like modern day comparison would be like there are people out there who watch Succession and go, oh, they're living the life, like they're great, and there's like regular people going, they're all horrible pieces of shit. I would never like to be like that.
Yeah, different tiers of reality. I've yet to see Succession, but I've gone. Obviously, I'm familiar with the premise.
We'll take it from me. They're all horrible pieces of shit.
All right. I won't watch it then.
They're very entertaining pieces of shit, but they are still horrible. So let's talk about like the early scenes in this film. Is there scenes that early on that really stick out to you as stuff that you enjoy about this film?
It's a very tight, it's a very well paced film, and it knows, it's a film that knows that it needs to have these moments, like the opening credits is why has nobody ever thought of it before? It's so well done, it's so beautiful. You're following a bullet from its production across the world through while this jaunty music's happening, but it's a protest song. I always forget the name of that song. I really love it. I used to perform it on stage quite a lot. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that sound? It's a song that people associate with the Vietnam War, and like this beautiful cinematography. Everything's got like a gold shininess to it, and also it's setting up the fact that we're probably going to be traversing the globe in this film, which we do. They spend some time in Africa. The crate opens, and it's the Cold War, and it's Siberian Russia, and then you open it, and it's freedom fighters in Africa. And then it all stops as it goes through the head of an innocent child. Like it, yeah, it's very, very striking opening imagery. That's also, it's quite garish, and it sets an amazing tone for the film. It's not a tongue-in-cheek thing, but it's a sort of a little jaunty. I tell you what, it's because we're following an inanimate object, so morally, you don't. There's no allegiance to pick. You're like, oh, okay, this is a film about it's like an Inspector Calls. It's a lot of evils coming together to create a terrible situation that we're in. I think this. Go on.
No, I was going to say, I think what the film cleverly does with that, like, first shot we get with Nicolas Cage with all the bullets around him and kind of him addressing the audience, we are told that the film is like, we're going to be told a story from this guy. It's his perspective. And then and then we're kind of, we dive into that kind of title sequence where it really just like, I remember first seeing it and that moment where the bullet goes through that kid's head, just being like taken aback, like kind of like, fuck, like what am I about to watch? In like a kind of, and it really like grabs you by the throat as well. I mean, like, you're gonna watch this. I think it's a real masterstroke, and it reminded me slightly, that thing of like following an inanimate object reminded me weirdly of Breaking Bad. Like they used to do a lot of that with the camera shots and stuff like that, like when they're cooking the meth and stuff like that, it would be like the camera would be like in a barrel, or like, do you know what I mean, like them moving a barrel around or moving like a bit of equipment and stuff like that, and the camera would be pointed at their faces, like this, where it's like you see the guy pull out the bullet and you see, I think it's really clever. Like there's that moment you see like the fingers around the bullet and it going into the clip. My only bugbear with it is it very much is 2005 CGI. Do you know what I mean? It does look a bit like, by today's eyes, looks a bit computer game.
A little bit. And you know, you watch something, I don't know, Expendables or whatever, and there's a million wayward bullets, and what we've just seen is one very specific wayward bullet that was of no consequence in any other action film go into the head of a inconsequential character that we're never going to see again, and we see for less than a second. There's something quite powerful about that as well. It's not like, oh, and now we're going to tell you the story of how this child's life, you know, it got to this point. No, that's the whole point of the film, that we just saw probably on screen, we probably saw 100,000 bullets on the floor, and every single one of those bullets could have gone through the head of a child, because this was no special bullet. This wasn't some bullet that had someone's initials scraved on it, like you see in an old Western film. It's just one of those million bullets, and that one went into the head of a child. That's quite powerful, actually. Yeah? But all that happens in a second. You don't have time to process it before suddenly it's Nick Cage's really nice voice narrating, and that's a big part of this film. If you can forgive a film with narration just off the bat, because some people that will show don't tell. Like I'm a screenwriter. That's what I do for a living now.
Yeah.
And I don't use voiceover for much, but that's because it's been drilled out of me. Like just show us what's happening.
Yeah.
But especially when it's a film, like something like they do it in Wolf of Wall Street when they cut away to Margot Robbie in a bath. They're like, this is going to be really boring unless it's Margot Robbie in a bath telling you. And The Big Short, I think they do it as well in The Big Short. But yeah, so you need the narration. If you can forgive narration, it's very difficult to criticize the script of this film, apart from a couple of times where it gets like a narrator can be really prosaic. You're like, oh, this is a story, so the person that's telling us, Nicolas Cage, has lived this. He's now telling us in sort of a flowery way. He's had time to contemplate the words he's going to use. It's Yuri Orlov. But then there's time where that floweriness creeps into the real life action, and it takes you out of it a bit. Like people are talking too flowery for like early scene. He's in the kitchen with his brother, Jared Leto, Vitoli, I think he's called Vitoli, and his brother's chef. And there's a sign on the wall that says "Beware of the dog," and he's like, "Beware of the dog? We don't have a dog. Are you trying to scare people?" And Jared Leto's like, "No, no. It's for me. It's to beware of the dog in me. The dog that wants to fuck everything that moves. The dog that wants to kill and fight other dogs." And you'd be there and you'd be going, "I'm sorry I asked." All right. Like, I don't need your life story. I'm your actual brother. I've been here for your life. I don't need your life story. So there's times when it gets a bit flowery, but mostly it's not. And because of their narration, it sort of ekes in under the carpet as well.
I think what's really clever about the narration,
just a couple of times it takes you out of it a bit when he gets a bit.
Yeah, I think the thing that was really clever about the narration is that it juxtaposes what you see on screen, because he is deadly honest with the audience. Like he's kind of like they're going, "I will lie. I'm a cheat. I will do this. I will do that." Whereas like on screen, like sometimes we don't see that. Like he's like, do you know what I mean? He's kind of honest with us. But he's lying to the characters. He's lying to his family. He's lying to his wife. He's lying to his set. Do you know what I mean? The people he's selling to, yet to the audience, he's telling us the truth. And I wanted to play a clip of one of the early like moments of the voiceover where he has that realization that he wants to become a gun runner.
It hit me. It couldn't have hit me harder if I was the one who had been shot. You go into the restaurant business because people are always going to have to eat. That was the day I realized my destiny lay in fulfilling another basic human need. The next Sabbath, I went to temple with my father. However, it wasn't God I was trying to get close to.
Eli, my eldest son,
My contact at synagogue landed me my first Israeli-made Uzi submachine guns.
One of the things that really stands out to me with that is the choice of music, and it's really interesting that Nicolas Cage begged his uncle Francis Ford Coppola to be in The Godfather Part 3, and this film very much feels like this is Nicolas Cage's Godfather in some regards. It is this like crime epic.
Oh yeah, that's such a nice way of thinking about it. You're right. Yeah. I didn't click. That's what he's. Yeah. Oh man. You can tell this is one of those films where, and he does a lot of them where he doesn't have to do very much. So if he wants to make some big choices at random moments, then he can if he likes. But he's got this really in this film, because it's narrated as well, mostly he just gets to stand around smoking and looking at stuff while him in his tracksuit in a recording booth from before, whatever, is doing the explaining for us. So he's just got this Keanu Reeves neutrality through most of this film. That sets quite a big tone of it as well. So yeah, but it does feel like he's invested in it. I feel like he's invested in this film a lot for a film where he doesn't have to do very much. Mm-hmm. He makes some quite big choices, and when he doesn't have to, That's a hard way. It's a weird way of explaining it. But we're talking about Nicolas Cage, so it's not an exact science.
Yeah, I think that, I hadn't really thought about it in that way, that obviously, I don't know, the narration does do a lot of the heavy lifting in this, but I think it does make up with like some real good visual flair, like some of.
Oh yeah, amazing. Yeah, beautiful stuff. There's some amazing shot matching that you wouldn't even notice if you're not necessarily looking for it. But if you're like, oh, I get it. Whoever made this is a really good cinematographer. From this point on, I shall now look. Some angled, like there's right at the end when he's getting interrogated by Ethan Hawke, and he's like, I'm not going to go to prison for a day. There's a weird Dutch angle where Ethan Hawke's walked out and he's left there like, all right, I've got away with it. And then they cut to the outside, and the exact angle that Nicolas Cage is sitting at in the room and the table is matched with a rooftop. It's some beautiful, It's a lot of work has gone into it.
There's even like just camera placement. I think it's when he goes into that restaurant, when he kind of is in the middle of that shootout. It's a turnstile door, and the camera is like placed in the top of it, so you kind of get the swivel of the door as it goes in. And like, it only lingers for like, it's only there for like, what, 2 seconds? The time it would take you to walk through a door. But it's just like, that is for me, that is filmmaking. That is like going, we could just film the inside of the restaurant and him coming through the door, but it's like, we'll make it a bit more kinetic. We'll kind of, we'll make the movement a part of it. And it's kind of, I think that's what makes this film kind of, because it is just this constant moving and gives you the impression of Yuri Orlov's life, of kind of, he's always moving, whether it is kind of figuratively or literally. Like he's on to the next identity, he's on to the next deal, it's the next thing, the next country. Like
he says, doesn't he? Yeah, they say in the script, he's like, they call it gun running for a reason. Because you always got to be on your toes, I think he says at some point. Yeah, you're so right. And the fact that the camera is latched to a revolving door, again, it's like another inanimate object that is, perpendicular to his life. So we're not seeing through his eyes. It's not over his shoulder a lot of the time. It's like this is a film about gun running and about all the players, and this is the person we've happened to chosen. But it's not a super in-depth character study. It doesn't like, bad stuff happens to him, but we don't linger on that so much. Like, we're not seeing a lot of Nick Cage pained faces in this. Like he loses his brother, he loses his wife, and we're on, because of the pace of the film, we're on to the next bit. It's not a crazy character study. It's a film very much amazing, a film about plot. It's a very plot driven film.
Yes,
Nicolas Cage is great in it.
I think if it was a character study, there would have been a lot more time spent on the kind of the soul searching to decide to be a gun runner, whereas in this film it's kind of like, this happened, people got to eat, people got to die, I'm going to become a gun runner. Next scene, I'm selling an Uzi, where he delivers the narration. Again, it's like, I think one of the fun things about narration is it gives opportunity for little quips like this.
The first time you sell a gun is a lot like the first time you have sex. You have absolutely no idea what you're doing, but it is exciting, and one way or another, it's over way too fast.
I think the thing with Nicolas Cage and that voiceover is, when voiceover is done bad, it is the original cut of Blade Runner, where it's Harrison Ford kind of reading dialogue that has clearly been written there and then and kind of handed to him, and then I went on to this thing. Whereas this, like, Cage sounds invested, and it's
not I don't want to be misleading with it. This is a voiceover done right. It's narration done right, because he's not telling you what's happening on the screen. It's not like, there I am selling a gun. He's adding extra stuff. And a voiceover narration done badly is, here I am. That's me before I realized life could be so bad, or whatever. You're like, yeah, just show us life being bad then, and we'll figure that out. This is, like, as you say, he's giving us an inside track of what he's thinking, and he's showing something else. So it's a very interesting use. It shows him as a duplicitous person. So it's adding value to the film. it is a good device, especially when we're learning as we're enjoying, aren't we? We're learning about gun running, we're learning about politics. I got fascinated by all this film. Actually, I reckon triggered my fascination of the Soviet Union. My wife is from Czech Republic, and she grew up in the Soviet Union, and it collapsed when she was a kid. And I learned so much about it from this film. But then I was like, "Oh, did you see any like people selling guns?" She's like, "What are you talking about?" That there was also just people just living and eating and sleeping. Like, it wasn't all Lord of War with Nicolas Cage.
You'll be showing her pictures of Viktor Bout now. Do you recognise this face? Do you recognise this face? This mustachioed
Do you remember
man? Oh, that's perfect. So yeah, moving on with the plot of this film. We obviously, he then kind of goes gangbusters, right? He kind of realizes that I can't go the legitimate means. He gets Vitaly involved, tries to go to like the Berlin Gun Fair in like 1983. And then we get introduced to Ian Holmes' character, this kind of really interesting rival gun runner who kind of seems like he's a bit more, I don't know. What's interesting about the whole thing of arms dealing is the legality of all of it, because like I don't know, like I'm not sure if the Simeon Weiss, Ian Holmes' character, is supposed to be a like legitimate like arms dealer, or if he is like just another Yuri Orlov. Like, what's your view on that character?
It's the same as every time you see a high-ranking general in a film. I never think, oh, that's the, well, maybe that's just having a problem with authority. I never think that's the good guy. I think that's the guy that's gotten really good at greasing palms and has learned the trade. So he's the Simeon Weiss, and Ian Holmes is amazing. He's really good in this film. He's so understated, and it seems like really evil, like he's got some secrets. Soulless. I first time, I didn't think. When I saw it, I thought, oh yeah, so that's the bad guy that's gotten really, really good at hiding in plain sight. Like most of the other people in the room, really, in that big room. And Nicolas Cage is innocently doing something illegal. He's like stumbled into it, like, oh, it can't be that bad. People do it and they make money from it. It's also, it's a wonderful story. You get so latched on when that gets set up. The student becoming the master is such an amazing payoff when it's done right, and it happens in this film, and it's really satisfying. When it's such a cheap trick, like to just repeat a line back that someone said, like it was like, I wasn't good enough for you then, and I'm not good enough for you now. It's like that. It's just like, it's just basically just Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman. Like, you made a huge big mistake, huge, but it is so satisfying that moment. Like, yeah, he's now more powerful than the guy that we assumed was the kingpin of guns.
What I love about that scene at the arms fair is not the women draped over the tanks. It is the use of Ride of the Valkyries, which famously used in Apocalypse Now, and it feels like another nod to Nicolas Cage's uncle Francis Ford Coppola. And I love that when we're introduced to Simeon Weiss, we get that Ian Holm gets this opportunity in this to just deliver these really tasty, sweet lines that tell you everything you need to know about the character. And he says this to Yuri Orlov.
I don't think you and I are in the same business. You think I just sell guns, don't you? I don't. I take sides.
But in the Iran-Iraq war, you sold guns to both sides.
Did you ever consider that I wanted both sides to lose? Bullets change governments far surer than votes. You're in the wrong place, my young friend. There's no place for amateurs.
Oh, I just love that line.
So good.
Bullets change nations quicker than votes do, and what's great about that is, like, unfortunately, that is true. Do you know what I mean? Like the thing about the thing about
he's speaking evil. He's very cold and evil, like delivery, but you can't fault what he's saying. He's not coming from a dark place in his heart. He's just listing the horrors of the world. So yeah, he's a very interesting character.
And So the next scene we get, like, which I found like really fascinating when researching it, is when we get that shot of Nicolas Cage and Jared Leto in that warehouse, just with a load of AK-47s piled up, and they're talking to that guy. I think it's in
Yeah.
Beirut, and they're telling him we're selling it by the weight, like by the kilo and stuff like that. They're all real AK-47s because they realised that it was cheaper.
Oh man.
It was cheaper to use real guns for that, like just for props, than it would be to get thousands of prop AK-47s. And I think
Yeah.
I recently found out that like there are something like 20 million AK-47s in the world. So it works out that there is one AK-47 to every 35 people on the planet, which is like a crazy.
It's the gun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that scene that you just mentioned, I've just realised as well. He that assumes a massive amount of knowledge on the person that's buying. He goes, "We sell them by the pound." No, what did he say? By the kilo. We sell them by the kilo. So, how many kilos do you want? And that guy's just got to instantly do the mental math of like, I don't know,
Yeah.
3,000 kilos. I don't know how much a gun weighs, but he just says it. It just straight away he goes, "Oh yeah, 3,000 kilos." Who the hell knows exactly what their guns weigh?
Yeah. And what like are they've got to be rounding up as well a little bit, because they're not. We're gonna have to saw this one in half, I'm afraid. It's just a bit over.
Even if you're a soldier and you hold an AK-47 every day, you don't know how much it weighs numerically off the top of your head. You'd know if you picked it up, but you wouldn't be able to say this weighs exactly this many pounds. I'd have no idea what it costs. And that guy doesn't skip a beat. He just asks for it instantly. Oh no, yeah, of course. I thought you assumed I came here for 3,000 kilos of guns. That's I'm glad you pointed that scene out, because that's tickled me.
Well, that leads to a scene that kind of shows us that Vitaly has got a kind of a lot more of a moral compass than perhaps Yuri does, because there's that conflict outside just after the deal, and like Vitaly wants to get involved, whereas Yuri's like, from that early stages of being a gun runner, is like, this isn't about us. Like, we're not to get involved in, and it's great seeding as well. It's Chekhov's conscience in a way of like,
that's nice.
Vitaly is there, saying this isn't right. Like, they're about to just shoot like a load of kids. Again, we're getting that mirroring of that opening sequence, like quite early on, to be like, these guns are being used for evil shit.
Jared Leto's whole thing in this movie is actually, he's not refusing the call to adventure, but he refuses the offer to change constantly throughout. And then it does, so there's no ramping up to when he's finally, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, when he finally makes the decision to step in and intervene. There was no ramping up to that. It's just constantly, you've got to go, don't get involved. Now you've got to go to rehab, but take some cocaine. And then the next time he offers him cocaine, there's no, I'm not going to take it this time. I'm growing as a person. The whole thing is just him on this tragic loop that's out of his control. It's a perfect foil for Nicolas Cage, who doesn't use his guns. He doesn't take drugs. Jared Leto's has handed over his agency. Not the actor, but totally in this film has handed over his agency. So he doesn't. So he's not. That's a great comparison, isn't it? Because there's Nicolas Cage in this. He is again the character. Yuri, he's 100% in control of his terrible actions, and yet he's our hero, and we're sort of rooting for him to get better and rise to ranks. Jared Leto, if depending on your stance on drugs, but he's had his agency and his choice taken away from him because he's become a drug addict. And yet he tries to do the right thing throughout. So he's a perfect foil. That's an amazing. The more we talk about this film, the more I'm convinced it's a really, really good film.
Yeah, well, I think the thing is, like, we're obviously seeing it from Yuri's perspective. So, like, I guess, like, you can look at like Vitaly and be like, oh, he's a fuck up. Whereas, like, if you kind of like step out of the film and like look at those two as people, as actual, like, if they were living, breathing people, you would be like, Yuri is a bad guy. He has basically like pulled his brother into this, and his brother's only escape, he believes, is to kind of go into oblivion of kind of taking drugs and kind of trying to suppress the evil world that he has been dragged into by his brother. And I think that this film is fascinating as well, that it takes the stance like that we follow Yuri, whereas like you could easily see this as a film, and it's interesting the fact that didn't get funding by any American studios. They had to go outside of the American studio system to get this funded.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
And you would imagine the American version of this film follows Jack Valentine, the Ethan Hawke character. Do you know what I mean? This flag waving,
the new
this kind of like do-gooder, like, and and it kind of like it mocks that idea of what an American film is, where it's like this cop, like, no matter what, no matter given the opportunity to do wrong, it's gonna do good. And it's like that is kind of like built in and embedded into the character of Jack Valentine. Like throughout the film, he's given these opportunities where it's like, you could be done with Yuri Orlov. Like he could be, you could easily, do you know what I mean? You could easily.
It's like Batman and the Joker.
Yeah.
He can't get rid of him because he's been chasing him so long. No, but you're right. And it's the same, I think, with the Jared Leto character. Like, there's that scene that we were just talking about. They're in the Beirut warehouse, and he goes outside, and then there's people being shot against the wall, and he's like, "This is not our fight." And there's a scene where Jared Leto is holding a gun, action movie style, and it's the poster for if this film had been led by Jared Leto. It's like you can see the cover of it. He's like ready to jump in and do this. It is an incredibly interesting choice because it points out the ridiculousness of that hyper-American vigilante or freedom loving, working outside the rules kind of cop character, when placed against the sheer calculated math of just the moral math of a character like Yuri Orlov. It's like, well, the world's really bad, I'm not that bad of a person, and his bad stuff's going to happen anyway. That American freedom philosophy just looks really, really stupid.
Yeah. Well, and I think that like what is fascinating about following Yuri is it almost like, if you kind of meditate on this film a bit, and it makes you question like yourself a little bit, watch it going, I was like, should I have been rooting for this? Because it cleverly gets you to root for this like quite abhorrent guy, really. Like as Jack Valentine says to him near the end of the film, he's like, what you're doing that's the real weapons of mass destruction. It's not we know that the nuclear warheads and that are kind of sealed up in their bunkers, and it's like, what's more of like a kind of chaos in the world is these kind of like guns being shipped around in ill-gotten means and kind of flying under the radar and just being put into the hands of children and kind of militias and stuff like that. That's the real danger. Yet we're there as an audience in some capacity going, oh, like, do you know what I mean? Like when we get that scene of them on the boat, like when they're
oh man, that's such a good example, because like his ingenuity, we admire his ingenuity on that, and what he's doing is trying to dodge Interpol because he's shipping guns to go kill people. We're like, oh, they turn the flag around. That's genius. Also, right, that scene. Okay, this is amazing. There's a bit where like he's on the phone to someone who's telling him that Interpol's coming, but clearly there was no actor or director on set reading the other half of that phone call, and it probably wasn't even in the script. It's probably just his lines because we don't hear the other person's voice. But Nick Cage is just having the conversation way too fast, so he's not giving the other like. Who's coming? Interpol? How long have we got? Not long. That's what are you talking about? That's not long enough. It's like that person on the other end of the phone must have been going, Interpol, now, they're here. Go. 6 hours. He's bad. Like, I'm sorry, but it's really bad acting. He's not acting across anyone. So it's really, really odd. It's an odd moment in an otherwise sort of well acted film. I don't know if the tension of the scene, or maybe I'm not giving him his credit and it was in the edit and they were like, no, just speed this scene up because obviously the tension. But yeah, it's like sort of GCSE acting where you're not the person on the other end of the phone is completely non-believable. They're definitely not there.
I think that kind of that scene is a great I don't know, it's a slight masterclass in kind of tension building and the fact of like really hooking us. It's like that is the first scene where you really go like, I want Yuri to get away with this. That's when the film like kind of jumps the Rubicon and it's like, oh, now I'm fully on board with this guy. Do you know what I mean? Like he's been, and I think he says around there as well, and it feels like an intentional choice. The narration says he explains like the kind of the black and white of gun running, and he operates in the grey, as he calls it, the kind of that area where it's like I can get away, and he does it throughout the film where he kind of uses loopholes, whether it's dismantling an army helicopter and shipping it to 2 different locations, so it's legally it's okay, but obviously morally it's bankrupt and redundant. Do you know what I mean? It's immoral.
Do you reckon that the flag, turning a Netherlands flag 90 degrees to make it a French flag, do you think that's completely apocryphal? No, apocryphal. What's the word I'm thinking? Is that embellishment? Because like you can't do that. Like you can't physically do that. You can do whatever you like, but you can't physically. It's a genius idea, proper clever. But if it seems more like an idea that somebody thought of in the writers' room, they're like, that's amazing. Or not the writers' room, but there's no mechanism on the side of the flag.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because flags have that kind of that white binding down the side where they're supposed to be attached from, whether it is a couple of rings on it, and obviously like the dimensions would be off. So obviously flags are done.
Yeah, even it says Ethan Hawke, like, why have you got that really tall, skinny French flag? What happened to your flag? I'd have loved that. Just that.
Yeah.
No need whatsoever.
Like knowing, like, yeah, why is your flag? Why you got a dumpy little flag? Why is it like? Because obviously they are normally landscape, and it's a portrait flag. So like there's
something weird about that flag. That dumpy little French flag. I'm on to you, Yuri. That's the only time in the film as well where it took me out of it a bit, when he opens the container, and because he's a genius, Yuri's covered it in old potatoes, so the idea as a deterrent. And then there's that line that you get in so many action films that says, we know this is an action film, so we're kind of tongue-in-cheek, and it's like Ethan Hawke's like, smells, as in double meaning of like something smells fishy here, like, but also it smells of potatoes, but also of duplicity. And it's the only time that ever happens in the film where you're like, oh, like, it's gone a little bit like, it's a little bit too American action film, in my opinion. It's such a good film that it's like it's really hard to criticize, but when you start to dig into it, there's some silly little bits like that take you out of it.
Well, that is the thing of always like kind of analyzing films, I find, is your mind often wanders to those things. Like, it's something you could love, then you start going, maybe just my brain goes, let's pick holes in this. Do you know what I mean? Let's find the bits where it doesn't work. And it's like, just enjoy it. Just in like, and I think it's the fact that I've watched this film multiple times, but I think that like, because the film moves so quickly, whilst you're watching it, it's only on reflection and kind of analysis that you dig into these things. The film doesn't really give you chance. Even if your brain is going, oh yeah, something that wouldn't work with the flag. Like, this is a bit hokey. The phone call's a bit rushed. You just like, the film is just kind of, right, the next scene is Nicolas Cage is getting shot by like a South American drug lord. And like Vitali goes absolutely haywire and does like a kilo of coke in 10 days, I think he says. Like, he finds him in a a Bolivian
yeah.
boarding house 10 days later, and he's about to snort the outline of the Ukraine in cocaine off of a table.
Yeah, and he's like, he goes, I was young, but I remember. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, wait, you mean you walked the coastline of Ukraine? What are you talking about? I get that he lived in Ukraine, so he'd remember like living in Ukraine. How does that make a difference? He's like, I took so much coke that it reminded me of my childhood memory of that time I walked the entire length of Ukraine.
Or even that thing of like, even though they don't live, they've moved away from the Ukraine, I'm pretty sure they've got access to an atlas or a map of the world to see what the kind of borders of the Ukraine look like. So it's not really
even if that he's probably seen it more times since he lived in America on a map of the world than he saw it as a child. It's
living in the country.
Good day.
But that is that I definitely think from being around people who have done coke, that is the type of shit that they come out with. Do you know what I mean? They have these crackpot ideas. Normally it's you're in a kitchen at 2 a.m. in the morning and they're telling you their business idea. In this case, it's going,
oh God, yes.
I remember the outline of the Ukraine, and I'm gonna snort all this cocaine, and it's just I don't know, it had my heart racing because I was like, you would die. You would. What is it? He says like, you will die by the time you get to like Crimea or something like that.
That's it. There's so many great lines in it. It's one of those films that reminds you that we're so used to just these amazing, succinct little lines and callbacks that no one would have thought of something that clever in the spot like that. But it's good. There's a lot of them like that in there.
So let's talk about the relationship plot line of this film and the kind of creepy meet cute that Yuri orchestrates to be able to. Obviously the character of Ava has been established. You get that shot at the beginning of her like kind of on this, it looks like a kind of, I don't know, Miss New York parade or something like that, and then throughout you get these glimpses of her, and it's like wherever I went she would follow me or something like that. You get like the billboard, I think when they're in Bolivia, of like a cigarette commercial, and she's on the billboard. She's kind of always cropping up. And then
that feels quite like, that's a massive coincidence. She's also not a global superstar, is she? We're not supposed to think she's like Kate Moss. She was quite a beauty queen in Ukraine, right? That's it. Or are we supposed to? I don't, because it's obviously, this is not based on real life. That part is it? This is a complete embellishment. Like, so what then? Are we supposed to believe that's an unbelievable coincidence, or that it's poetic license because he thinks about her all the time, or that she really is like famous enough to have a Beirut billboard in a war zone? It's an odd, I don't know.
Yeah, I think she's like Ukrainian. I'm not sure if she's Ukrainian or like she's a Ukrainian immigrant. She's also from New York as well.
Odessa.
Yes, or like she's from Bushwick or something like that, because that's something like they kind of and what's creepy about this is he knows all this information about her, and obviously sets up this event of there's supposed to be a photo shoot for her, full well knowing that there is no photo shoot, and it's just him kind of lounging about on a sunbed, kind of waiting for his moment to strike. I just thought like. And it reminded me as well when he kind of like the voiceover kicks in and about how he can't afford the private jet and stuff like that, and he's making it look like he's got this life that he doesn't have. I was like, is Yuri Orlov a proto influencer? You know, like they kind of
man. And he carries that camera around, and with no one else, so he's there on his own with the camera as well. That's quite weird. Like, he's not a professional photographer. Otherwise, he would have said, "Oh, I'm a professional photographer. I'll take your picture." He just goes, "Maybe I'll take your picture," with a camera that he brought just for himself. What, to take pictures of seagulls or whatever?
Yeah.
Not him and his family.
Yeah.
Odd. That's that. But go on.
I was gonna say, what do you make of that kind of like that I think I'm not sure how that is supposed to be portrayed in the film. Are we supposed to like think it's sweet what he's doing? Because I see it as like it's totally quite creepy.
There's a couple of he does it a bunch of times in this film where as an impressionable teen, I was like, oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. But I'm not mentioned it. I'm transgender, which your listeners may not picked up on because I've got quite a deep voice. When I was a kid and a boy, I was like, it's so cool. When I watched it back, I was like, that's creepy as hell. And there's a bit later where he goes, doesn't matter about all the other women. I always made love to Ava like she was the only one. And then when I was like a boy, I was like, oh, that's so cool. What a nice man. And now I'm like, you bastard. What the fuck are you talking about? That's terrible. If anything, be honest about it. I always made love to Ava like she was the only one. And it only hit, I watched it again today, obviously, in preparation. I was like, you bastard. But there's a time when that was heroic. Yeah. So, yes, you're right. There's a bunch of times throughout the film where we're just being led along. He's so ingenious. He's like the Walter White. You don't realise he's properly evil until, the end. And we'll get to it, of course, he does descend into like this living hell, emptiness thing. And it's like, oh, he's getting his comeuppance in real time. Not like he gets shot. Because a bad guy just gets shot at the end of the film. You're like, oh. So he didn't really have to live with the consequences of any of his actions at all. This in real time, he's sad, like he's not having a good time. So it sort of works out all right.
The next thing I wanted to play a clip of a moment that Yuri shares with his dad when kind of I think it's Christmas Day. We get that impression that we're shown that Yuri is a piece of shit. Like his son has just taken his first steps. Him and Ava are married now. It kind of again the film moves at a clip. They're married. Like it's shown that her family have like kind of tragically died. I guess in possibly like I don't know like Ukrainian war and stuff like that. Kind of stuff that happened in the in the Soviet like times and stuff like that. And then on Christmas Day, he's more excited about the fact that the Cold War is over, and he sees his opportunity to kind of weasel his way in to get what he wants in gun running. But his dad,
he's done the math in real time. He's seeing the math happening in real time. Yeah,
he's a beautiful mind. He's kind of seeing the maths in front of him. But I think this is a really like beautiful moment that kind of somebody saying like, what you're doing isn't great, Yuri.
At least there'll be religious freedom.
Let's hope so. I think I'll go back for a visit. Do you stay in touch with Uncle Dmitri?
I'm not a fool, Yuri. I don't think you're going to Argos to sell Pepsi Cola. Is this how you want to be remembered?
I don't want to be remembered at all. If I'm being remembered, it means I'm dead.
Merry fucking Christmas!
Who is this, Vitaly?
Well, yeah, that clip ends with Vitaly coming through looking like a homeless Santa kind of busting in on the day, which I guess, is the film plays it like it's a bit of a joke. But again, looking at them as real world characters, Vitaly is a deeply sad character. I imagine like if the film was from his perspective, it would be a bit more akin to another Jared Leto film, Requiem for a Dream, than it would be this kind of blows. This film is almost like the Johnny Depp film Blow, but for gun running. Do you know what I mean? It's taking a world.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
Of duplicitous and kind of bad people and making it kind of, hey, let's put a cool soundtrack on it and make it quite fun. But yeah, what do you?
It is a slick film. That quote that you just played, it has so much depth to it. When you think, okay, so his ultimate goal is to not die, which is very relatable. Like most of us, like we stay alive and we want to stay alive, so we do things to stay alive. But he's saying that he doesn't want to be remembered, because if he's being remembered, it means he's dead. So there's no reality in his mind where being remembered could be a good thing as well. So he's already so far gone, and he knows he's made such terrible moral choices that there is no, like, he doesn't want to have a legacy. He's just living right now in the moment, doing these terrible things and making as much money as possible and enjoying it and providing for his family. He isn't a psychopath. He does have emotions, and he wants to look after his family. But he's not concerned about leaving a good legacy at all. That's quite interesting. That gives it even more immediacy and urgency. All this has got to happen before he catches the wayward bullet in the head.
Yeah, and there's I think Cage's performance in that scene is fantastic, because you get that sense of the disinterest in what his dad is saying in regards to, like, he really portrays that kind of whatever, like, let's talk about Dimitri kind of thing. And then when he delivers that line about not wanting to be it is weird, because it is that it's a lack of foresight, right? He doesn't have that foresight into what is the end goal of this. Like, he doesn't understand. It's almost like he doesn't understand the real world long-term ramifications of this. And it's kind of, I don't know, I feel like doing something like that without an end goal is, I think it's touched on later in the film, right, where it's like, it's tapping into that animalistic thing inside of you where it's like, I'm just good, like, it's something I'm good at, so I'm just going to do it, like, come hell or high water. I will just give in to base human instincts to just do what I feel like I need to do, or just, and it gets beyond the pass of needing to do something, because he gets to the point where he is kind of like, he's loaded, he's got the world at his fingertips, but he just can't cut it off. He just can't, like, he can't stop. And it's interesting, because it is like that drug addict.
He's in too far to get out, like the old Elvis Presley quote. He's like, he's in too far to get out, not just for crime reasons, but because the momentum is so big. And then there's a amazing bit. I don't want to step on any clips that you may have coming up, so tell me if you do. But do you remember? So it's quite shortly after this, a bit happens, but there's just a bit where he's in Africa and the hyenas come up to him, and he says he's starting to feel cursed with the curse of invincibility, and that has stayed with me since I've watched it. That's an amazing quote. This idea that he's a necessary evil that, like, the devil is keeping alive, almost like bloody what's it, Ghost Rider. Almost, he's just Ghost Rider. But he's a necessary evil to the point where the universe has to keep him in place and in this horrible existence that he's built up, because he's a cog in a machine that's going to keep turning. That's an amazing line. The curse with invincibility. Even the hyenas are like, oh, we can't kill him because he's just got to keep going. And then they turn around and he's so sad. But without narration, that scene just looks like he's pathetic and he's like lifeless. And the hyenas are like, oh, he's not even worth it. But it's only with the narration that you get the other side. Oh no, he's all powerful and he's doomed to this life, like wandering as this unfallible gun runner. It's amazing.
Well, we get this speech about the AK-47 in the film.
Of all the weapons in the vast Soviet arsenal, nothing was more profitable than Automat Kalashnikova, model of 1947, more commonly known as the AK-47 or Kalashnikov. It's the world's most popular assault rifle, a weapon all fighters love. An elegantly simple 9-pound amalgamation of forged steel and plywood. It doesn't break, jam, or overheat. It will shoot whether it's covered in mud or filled with sand. It's so easy, even a child can use it. And they do. The Soviets put the gun on a coin. Mozambique put it on their flag. Since the end of the Cold War, the Kalashnikov has become the Russian people's greatest export. After that comes vodka, caviar, and suicidal novelists. One thing's for sure, no one was lining up to buy their cars.
And what's interesting about that speech in relation to that scene you were talking about, when he's kind of, so he's taken brown, which, like, I had to actually Google to see if it was a real thing, but it's the mixture of cocaine and gunpowder, and I think gunpowder has a chemical in it that is used in like for heart medication, and it kind of I guess
Oh, right. So it opens up the
it kicks your heart
blood
back. Yeah,
vessels. Wait, so
something
is
to
it real?
it is it
Or is
is
it art imitating life because of that film? Just like adrenochrome in Fear and Loathing. It's like theoretically it could exist, but it's only existed since that film. Or is it? Does it predate the film?
It predates the film. Yeah, it is a kind of it is a real
Oh.
yeah. It's got its own like Wikipedia entry kind of. So I think
Yeah.
it would have been one of those. Again, I don't think it's a thing that derives from Viktor Bout. I just think it is kind of in the research of doing this. Andrew Niccol has probably found out that is something that would have been kind of taken in Liberia or Sierra Leone or something like that. So he's kind of like,
Yeah.
we've got to include this somewhere. But yeah, in relation to the thing of the AK-47, is there's that moment when he's taken Brown, and there's those guys who go to shoot him with an AK-47.
Oh yeah.
And it jams, and it like in the film he said to us like it never jams. It like it's the most reliable gun in the world. And even that you're like, there is an element where you're like, are we to believe? Because obviously there's that like blue hue on that whole scene when she's taking Brown. And it's
I never clicked on that before. That's such a good spot. You're right. Yeah, like he's Domino from the X-Men. His power of curse of invincibility has changed the probability of the gun jamming. Like, we don't believe it in those terms, but yeah, like something so unlikely has happened to preserve him as a force of evil in the world. Wow, that's cool, man. I never noticed that first time.
And then even like, because obviously we're introduced to Andre Baptiste and Andre Baptiste Jr. These, I think Andre Baptiste is based on a real life leader of Liberia, Charles Taylor. Like, I think somebody who was like Andre Baptiste in this film, who is kind of this a dictator warlord who kind of, we're shown when Yuri Orlov meets him like very quickly. I think one of his soldiers is talking to like a woman who's in the office, and he just shoots him dead there and then. And Yuri's reaction to that as well, like he is all business and seems deluded in the fact that in the face of this real danger and like this pit of vipers, really, like I think it's moments later you hear that Andre Baptiste Jr. is like a cannibal and stuff like that. Yet he's like kind of there going, hey, why have you shot the gun? I can't sell a used gun. Why have you shot the gun? Like, I'm not like, there's something interesting about.
So in that moment, then, are you, because I had read it as his shock at the shooting is a real reaction to the snuffing out of a human life, but then he's terrified of the repercussions of speaking up, so he pivots and makes that excuse in real time to save his own ass. He says, is that how you read it or not? I don't think he's completely divorced of humanity to the point where he's just thought about the gun. I think he's shocked, but you don't get shocked at Andre Baptiste because he's in charge. So he goes, yeah, I mean, it's a used gun now, but he's adept at this point at lying, and covering. That's how I had interpreted it.
That is a great reading of that. Yeah, and it really plays into the fact of like how he can turn any situation to his favor, and it reminded me of like growing up as a young boy, and you find out with like certain men in your life how to interact with them. Like there's some like blokey blokes who respond to with their hazing, they want you to give them shit back, and you get that with like Andre Baptiste, where like it's the kind of the gumption and the kind of quote unquote balls of him to kind of stand up to him is what kind of makes him respect him and says like, I think me and you can work together. And it's kind of, your reading is great. Is this kind of in the floundering, he's managed to
salvage,
twist that and contort it into kind of making him like an ally with this scary guy.
Yeah, that's a nice interpretation of it as well. The you just speaking on his terms, and then you're in. Then once you've made friends with somebody like that, you don't get to change gear again. You're like, oh, the fakeness, the fake thing that you did to ingratiate yourself with the blokey blokes in your life. Once you're there in that beer garden and you've done that, you can't change gear out of it. You're just along for the ride, and whatever that entails. And in Lord of War, it's genocide.
Yeah. If you've shown a fake interest in football, you can't all of a sudden be like, anyone check out?
Yeah, I'm not going today.
Yeah. You can't all of a sudden pivot to be like, you know what? I'm the musical theatre guy. It's like, oh, that's not a bloke we met. You were all about pints and footy. Like, why is it now like? Well, why couldn't I be into both if I wanted to as well, guys? Like, but yeah, it's deconstructing my own masculinity as well on here. Thank you, Jordan.
It's good. It's a good film to do it with.
Let's talk about like the kind of location shooting in Liberia. Well, I think it's South Africa. Dubbing in for kind of all of the African locations in this, but we get some amazing stuff when the film is set in Africa, right?
Oh man, yeah. They what's the word? A bit of magical realism, obviously with the brown, but also because it is just a leap into a whole other world. That the whole place does kind of have a dreamy glaze, like when he leaves the two sex workers in the room for him and stuff. You can have that gauziness, and it's almost like what they can do a lot in films in hot countries. The actual humidity of the air is displayed on screen like more as a gauziness. There's like a poetic license to make things a bit dreamier when the air itself is infested with malaria. Like, yeah, it's really nice. It is a beautiful film. It's properly good looking film.
So there's something we skipped over, and it's like when he's doing those deals in the Ukraine and kind of shipping off all these guns, his uncle Dmitri is caught up in the middle of this. Like Simeon comes and they have this little exchange with Simeon.
Instead of cutting each other's throats, it may be beneficial if we work together. What do you think?
What do I think? I think you are the amateur now. I think you should go with your instincts, with your first instinct. I'm the same man who was not good enough for you before, and I'm just not good enough for you now.
And that leads to Simeon trying to put a hit on Yuri, but backfires and Dmitri is killed. What do you make of like Yuri's and like Kate? Yeah, like where the character is at that point, because obviously his reaction to that, for me, is like he does seem a bit devoid of humanity at that point, where it's like he just brushes it off. It's not like at that point it's kind of you're unsure who do you know what I mean? Like the bomb, is it like, did he know, or is it Yuri who's kind of taken Dmitri out of the picture at this point?
To that, yeah, you're right. At a certain extent, to a certain point, you think, I wonder if because his reaction, he does it a few times in the film. Nick Cage doesn't give very much when people die in this film, and is it an interpretation? Is that an acting choice of because he's divorced from humanity, or because he was slightly phoning it in at that moment? But yeah, I did think, oh, has he taken a chess piece off the table himself? Has he killed his uncle? That a little aside, Dmitri is like when you do an impression of someone of a celebrity, you usually have like a little passphrase that you use to get into their accent. And for me to get into Nicolas Cage, it is Uncle Dmitri, because the way he says Dmitri, Uncle Dmitri, and if I just keep saying Dmitri over and over again, I can get into his voice. So that's another thing that Lord of War has given to my career.
Uncle Dmitri.
Yeah. He's got a voice that's so like when he's on this gear, which he is in a bunch of films, but so he doesn't explode a lot in this film. When he's in this gear, he's got this voice that is, if you popped a wig and a sparkly dress on him, he'd be a drag queen and he wouldn't have to change his voice at all. He just has this really sultry little, my Uncle Dimitri, yes, my uncle Dimitri's here. Like, yes, queen. Like he's really weird. He doesn't, but you don't think of it because it's Nicolas Cage. But he could be like a what's the word? A sarky drag queen.
I would love.
Anyway, it's so off point.
I would love to see that as like a small indie film, like as I don't know, Nicolas Cage as like this aging drag queen, kind of like trying to almost like in the mold of The Wrestler. Do you know what I mean? Like his life.
Yeah, that's great.
Like someone like the Safdie brothers making a film about this kind of New York drag queen who's kind of, I don't know, tussling with personal life and kind of struggles and stuff like that, and then on the week
that is not a bad shout at all. That's a great, because it's super relatable, and it would point, I mean, this is not what this podcast is about, but it would also it's showing of that era of like, there's new drag queens now that aren't like that. Like, you can't be just Nicolas Cage in a dress, but there was a time when you could have just been Nicolas Cage in a dress, and that passed for drag. Now it's all super hyper realistic and makeup and all that stuff. So him like falling out of the times and like losing his relevance. That's so good.
Hollywood. Let's get on the phone. We've got your next big picture sorted. Perfect. So let's, like, what other aspect is there? Certain scenes of this film that you kind of really want to dive into in this conversation?
There's just some amazing moments like that I just haven't seen before. When when he leaves him for 24 hours in the Sahara, that's probably not the geographic location, but when he's there, and you see the time lapse of the people taking apart the plane, that's got to be not a real plane, but a real prop, right? That's got to be a set. That's got to be a to scale, like polystyrene foam plane, right? Because that's real. What you're seeing is real. They might have maybe they've superimposed in the fire or whatever.
Yeah.
And they could have done it against the green screen, but that's in real time, a bunch of people taking apart a plane. It's amazing. It's a great shot.
Yeah, I love that, and I love that kind of interaction we get between Yuri and Jack Valentine, where they're kind of, it's set up like he's just really, like, he's doing what he does, Jack Valentine. He's playing within the rules, and he knows that he can hold him for 24 hours. So just like, he's going to make him suffer. He knows kind of, and I think there's an amazing line around that point as well, when he's like giving away the guns, and he's like, what would take a Heathrow like luggage crew a day to do, like African, like Sierra Leone natives did in 10 minutes. And then he has that philosophical idea of the plane being taken just being like life itself, that everything just kind of goes back into the earth and it needs to like disappear and dissipate. And it's like, I don't know, you get like this poetic aspect to the character of Yuri, where it's like, he does just understand there is this ebb and flow of things, and it's like, I don't know, as much as he tries to control it, and this is at a point where things are starting to spiral out of control, right, for that character, because I think it's very soon after we get that amazing shot of the plane being deconstructed that we get Jack Valentine trying to appeal to Ava's kind of good nature to take Yuri down, right? And
it's very tenuous what he says. He goes, I heard your parents died tragically, right? Yes. Well, no, and then he has the newspaper article of it, like her parents died, which is a proper left field. He's like, I've got this this news clipping of your parents, and he goes, it's men just like your husband that sold them the guns that did it. Like, all right, yeah. It's quite, it's a few steps removed, but sure. But it seems really unnecessary thing to bring up. Like, he's trying to appeal to her emotional side. It just felt like one step removed from important enough to say, like, yeah, he sold it like in my mind, it's like if they'd been hit by a car, he could have been like, well, your husband is the man that sold the car, or like your husband is the man that works at the petrol station where they build up the car. We get that that's the point of the film, but it felt a little bit tenuous to me. Yeah, go on.
No, I was just about to say, yeah, there's that scene as well where Yuri is presented Simeon by Andre, which is what leads him on to taking the brown, which is again like a real like him being confronted like firsthand with what he's doing, because up until this point it's like, and it kind of, again, it's tapping the audience on the shoulder being like, oh yeah, you've been enjoying this because it's kind of, you're one step removed from the kind of the violence of it all, because you're just following this man who, for all intents and purposes, we could be showing you him, say, selling sofas across the world and doing really well, and you're kind of all invested. But now it's like, well, you get to fire one of your bullets and like take out your opposition here, who's obviously come, I guess, out of spite to sell to Andre Baptiste's enemies, just to kind of get one over on Yuri, which is like, oh, real juicy stuff. But yeah, that scene is I don't know, it's fucking harrowing.
It is extremely. And then for it to then devolve into sort of this dreamy sequence where you then see him standing up with a hole through his head, talking and stuff. It's like it's like Olav's brain trying to cope with that stress of it, trying to retroactively justify everything he's doing. And it's like his brother, the only way you can actually process those kinds of interlaying evils and the real world ramifications is for it to be a dream, or for it to be lacquered with a gauzy drug sort of fueled haze. I mean, they are brothers. They're brothers in arms. They say it a lot, don't they? I can't remember what they say. But I can't speak Ukrainian, so why would I even bother to try and summon up that piece of information? But it's natural that they would go to the same place. He reluctantly took that drug, but he could have not done it as well. Could have, if he can trick people across the country, he could have like. Well, that guy's like, you should probably take it, otherwise, like, I guess the implication being they'll be insulted if you don't take it, and also it's your gunpowder. He could have like just lent it away and pretended to take it, and then turned around and gone, yeah, thanks, that was nice. But he actually took it, so that would imply that he was looking for that escape as well. And they are brothers, so it's natural they would both have that same inclination to avoid the evil by diving into drugs.
Yeah, and that kind of, I don't know, like it's a metaphysical representation of what he's done by shooting Simeon as well. It is this like the guns are now a part of him as well. Do you know what I mean? Like it is the point of no return. Like he is one and the same with the weapons that he is selling in this weird way, that like he's ingested. Do you know what I mean? It's a part of him. It's in his bloodstream. This gunpowder, and it is the he's over the rainbow.
Incredible.
Do you know what I mean? He's over the rainbow. Into the land.
Sorry
of Oz.
to talk over you there. Oh, I think we've got a little bit of a delay, more than usual. Sorry to talk over you there, but again, that is a beautiful observation that I didn't click. So he's loaded himself with gunpowder. Yeah, you're so right. He's become the instrument of war that he sells. There is he couldn't get closer to the product by that. Unless he loaded himself up with bullets. That's so good. That is a genius bit of writing. Oh my God, that's wonderful.
And then what transpires when he gets home as well? Obviously, him thinking his life is on the skids as it is Ava is now party to what he's doing, and she like again as much as this film relies on narration, there is visual storytelling, like her kind of the choice, and it's tastefully done as well, but of her just being like completely naked, and her kind of like telling him like, none of this, I can't wear any of this, and it really speaks to that like repulsion you'll feel if, like, I don't know, yeah, if you were in that situation where it's like everything in your life is a lie, and you can,
Yeah,
I can like it's a physical representation of that ick you feel about something, and it's like for her, it's I need to physically shed this life, but like she again, she's trapped, and it goes into like his lies, and they have this exchange when they kind of she confronts him about the gun running.
Please, stop.
It makes no difference if I stop. Someone will take my place the next day.
So let them. We have enough.
It's not about the money.
And what is it?
I'm good at it.
Oh,
yeah, man.
which is like just the real kicker, isn't it? Just that thing of like, you are so deep in it that like there is no way out of it, and just I don't know, like it's a very weird comparison, but like as a smoker, like I just have that thing where it's like I know the ills of it, I know what it's doing to my body, but it's like that thing you fool yourself and convince yourself, but I like it. Do you know what I mean? I like doing it, and it's like
Yeah, there's something quite insipid about your brain being able to compartmentalize and justify it, because then that's something higher than your own logic.
Mhm.
Like there's a carnal thing in your body that's saying, like, I can fool myself into thinking that it's sort of okay because you want to do it, exactly, because he's enjoying it. He wants to do this.
Yeah, and that does spur him to go straight, as it were, trying to sell. I guess he's selling like lumber and stuff like that, and Interpol are listening in to everything, and then what is it? Andre and his son come to visit Yuri in New York, and like, kind of, it is that it is that Godfather thing again of like, just when I thought I was out, they drag me back in. Like he thinks he's out.
Man.
He thinks he's out of the life, and he's on the straight and narrow. And I guess this is where the film starts to hit its conclusion, right? Because we get, I think, I think that Bridget Monahan as Ava is fantastic in this film, and she really gets to. I think she really gets to shine in the kind of latter stages of this film. What do you make of her performance in this, Jordan?
Yeah, because she's sort of like, she's introduced early, but without dialogue or anything. We know what she looks like. So it's quite late in the day that they're seen. It feels like a long time until she's on screen, and then it's sporadic. And yeah, it's easy to fall into the trope of just having the female character there to ask the man what he's doing and to get him to, ruminate on his feelings. Mm-hmm. But yeah, her humanity does creep into it. If she wasn't there, it might feel a little bit more like that cool vigilante storyline of like, no, he might still get away with it. He's like Dexter. Like he might still get away, but she is there to constantly remind us, that there is, every other character in it has got these duplicitous means, or their blood is filled with drugs, or like that, so they're not of their right mind, or they have a duplicitous. They're adjacent to crime or evil, and she's not. She's this beautiful, and it doesn't hurt that she's beautiful. So she's like a walking angel incarnate. That is, I mean, the only sin that you could blame her for is perhaps naivety, like a little bit of naivety and hubris, and she gets over that in the film. That's the conclusion of the film. Is we see her. She doesn't allow herself to keep believing it for any longer, which is incredibly admirable, because she's become accustomed to a certain type of lifestyle, and all of that does shine through. So for a character that could have just been expositional, it is an amazing performance. And yeah, there is still that little turning point where she's sitting in the back of the car and she says to the taxi driver, "Oh no, hang on." So she says to the taxi driver, like, "Follow him," at a certain point. Oh, like, that's the guy, I want to follow him.
Yeah.
And she's saying to the kid, like, the kid's like, that kid is. I mean, never worked with actors and never worked with animals or children. But for his like one line, it's pretty good. It's pretty good little line he does.
Yeah, I was unsure of like how old he was ever supposed to be, or like kind of did he stop aging at one point? Like, so obviously they just use
an
array of different child actors for when he has his brief moments on screen. But I was like, at that moment, I was like, right, has the film slowed down in time? Is he supposed to be older than that? Obviously, he was born in 91. I guess around this, he's a yeah. I was just trying to like doing some trying to do the mental math on it. Going, should he be older than this? Should he be like maybe? I don't. But he would have been like the same age as me, basically. So I was like, he would have been. This would have been 2002-ish. Like he would have been 12. Yeah, maybe he would have been a bit taller. I don't know. Maybe again, that's me just looking for things to gripe about.
Projecting. That's so weird though when you get to post 2000. Anything post 2000 just feels too modern to be in a historically
yes,
like to be in a film that's about the past. Like if you saw that limited drama series about Chernobyl, and there was like robots. They brought in robots and they put them on the ceiling to get rid of some of the nuclear waste. And I'm like, how are there robots in a historically accurate drama? That's too modern. It's just too modern of a thing. Yeah, the fact that this was all happening after the year 2000 just it feels too soon, doesn't it?
Yes, and I think what's really important about this film is the cultural and kind of contextual time in which it came out, because obviously this film is trying to speak to what is happening in the world at the time. Obviously, this would have been post the invasion of Iraq, and the kind of post 9/11. So
yeah,
would have been very much. It would have been Andrew Niccol speaking to that kind of using a tale or somebody who did this before, and obviously probably I think there's a line in the film that he never sold to Osama bin Laden. The real guy did sell to Osama bin Laden. Like he kind of sold to everyone, but at the same time was selling to America. And I think it's now been found out that even America was selling to the Taliban at some point when they were not fighting Americans, basically. So it's all a weird. I think arms deals and kind of and we get that title at the end, right, where it says that the biggest dealers in arms is like America, UK, China, and stuff like that. It's like kind of like the audience is almost like the people you have in power. The blood
we're complicit.
The blood is on their hands as well.
Especially since we've just watched and rooted for a gun runner for like an hour and a half, and like he's our hero, he's our protagonist, and we've hoped that he'd make it. That's kind of interesting. Yeah, you end like, oh no, maybe I'm part of the problem. I'm literally part of the problem. That's just told me, and maybe I shouldn't be rooting for him. The scene. So yeah, they're in the taxi. She follows him, and I think maybe it's that scene, or maybe it's a little bit before. Jeff Buckley's "Hallelujah" is playing, and I personally think that is the greatest piece of recording of modern music that exists. It's absolutely beautiful. And you see all of his passports, all of his guns. I'm just trying to remember how that film kind of closes out before the chat with Ethan Hunt. Before them, yeah.
It's his catalogue of carnage, he calls it.
Oh yeah.
My son's birthday unlocked what the government would later describe as a catalog of carnage.
I just thought that was a perfect summation of what it was. So yeah, obviously she's wise to him, but then he is pulled in for this one last deal in Seattle. Well, he thinks it's just in Liberia for Andre Baptiste, but then is kind of hamstrung and told, no, you've got to take these guns to Sierra Leone. And then Vitaly is had been brought back into the fold. And this is where obviously we mentioned earlier about Chekhov's conscience, and Vitaly it doesn't sit right with him that obviously he sees just over the hill of where they're doing this deal that there is a camp. And again, there are acts of real brutal violence towards people in this, and you get that child and mother hacked with machetes, like by some kind of militia rebels off of a pickup truck, and it's horrible, and it's a real like shake on the shoulders to the audience that like you're still rooting for this guy. It is the Breaking Bad effect. I think this film does pair well with like that Breaking Bad thing. Like it's constantly asking you throughout, like, are you still on board with this guy? At what point are you no longer on Yuri Orlov's side? And it really tests.
And if there wasn't if there wasn't an Aaron Paul or a Jared Leto, which is to say perhaps a younger and to say a traditionally more aesthetically beautiful human, like a sort of a more prototypical action hero person to their side that is condemning it, it might be a completely different outcome of the film. Like you may still have got through that, like, yeah, but you know, there's always going to be collateral damage. But because the young action, there's still little eeks of Hollywood there. Like when you're not sure, when you're watching a film, especially a film that's being narrated, and you're kind of going along with what's being said, and you're being led along, and you're being spoon-fed a little bit. It's a beautiful looking film. The script's action, guns blowing up. You do kind of then defer to the attractive young action hero in times of moral crises. You're like, well, he says it's bad, and he's slightly more attractive than Nicolas Cage.
So how does this deal play out, and what does inevitably Vitaly's conscience lead him to do, Jordan?
Oh man, he's unsure, and he goes and has a look, and then he says, "Can I have a word with you, Nicolas Cage?" Which is an odd choice to be so fourth wall breaking. He takes him aside and he says, "Look, they're going to die if you sell these guns. Don't sell those guns." And then Yuri says, "Well, for the millionth time, this isn't our fight." But it actually is right now happening in real time. We're going to sell these guns. We're part of the fight. But he doesn't say that. So Jared Leto, he sneaks away and he nicks a hand grenade. 2 hand grenades. And I was confused about the science of the hand grenades. He takes one out and just throws it, and it blows up straight away. And blows up half the shipment, which is important to the story. And then he pulls the other pin out, but gets shot a bunch of times. So he sort of effectively dies. He's not going to recover from that. And then Nicolas Cage comes along and just puts the pin back in, and everything's fine. So I guess I have to defer to the film that that's how it works. I just felt it was a bit weird. Like I thought, go on.
I think that grenades, traditional grenades have like a kind of like a pressure pad on the side that you hold down as you kind of throw them. So it's once that is released that the timer kind of comes in. Do you know what I mean? Like the kind of 5 seconds. So
okay,
if you're holding
so as long as he's holding it,
yeah. Which again, I'm sure if you were shot, you would have let go of that grenade at that point. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure like the body would not have let you like involuntarily. You would have gone. Oh, do you know what I mean? Your hands would have opened, and that grenade would have just flown anywhere, not where you wanted it. But I think that
not where you wanted it. And he took quite a few bullets. He took two people's scattering of bullets before he went down. It was pretty good. It was pretty good shooting cinematically.
And it adds to the pantheon of films where Jared Leto dies as well. I think it's kind of it's somewhere in his early contract. It's like Fight Club. Yeah, I'll die. Lord of War. Yeah, I'll die. Give me a death. Like it's got a
it's good dire.
It was him on his way to being like full. Give me an Oscar in every movie he does, whether it's Dallas Buyers Club or House of Gucci, where it's like I need to do something where people like are giving me are giving me the attention to warrant awards. What are your thoughts on Jared Leto? Because I guess like you're talking of Dallas Buyers Club, like that was quite a divisive.
That
film.
was a beautiful. It's a beautiful representation. So like I am transgender, so I get people forwarding me stuff a lot. And when that film came out, everyone wants to. I think sometimes they want to ask me to make sure if it's all right to like something. And I was like, it's great. It's great representation. People perhaps worry that there should be more transgender people in transgender roles, and so why give it to some straight white guy? Was like, yeah, but like I was a straight white guy, so at some point in the film, it's like Eddie Redmayne playing it. It's like, yeah, it makes sense. Like for him to, if half the film is going to be a man, but it could be a man. That's fine. Anyway, Jared Leto I thought was amazing in that. Also, a former musician that I am, I had huge regard for him as lead singer of his band 30 Seconds to Mars. Isn't he one of very few people to have won that crossover award of like greatest musician and greatest actor? It's a specific award that's given to people that cross over from music to acting successfully, because platinum selling albums.
He's on his way to get the EGOT, right, which is I'm sure he's probably got a Grammy.
Yeah.
He's got an Oscar.
Yeah.
All he needs to win now is a Tony and an Emmy. So once he kind of once he like slumps down into doing more does some TV roles, he might get an Emmy. And what is Tony? Is that kind of musical, like musical?
I think Tony's music. Isn't that also for written music? Is it? I don't know. I think you win a Tony for musical recordings that are used in film. Maybe not. Tony's definitely music. Yeah, Jared Leto, EGOT. I like him, and he's good in this film, and I've not seen him turn in a terrible performance. I don't know. Like, I really like the Joker. It's skirted over me why people hate him so much as the Joker. It's very difficult to compare yourself to now Joaquin Phoenix, but also Hugh Hefner. My brain is scrambled.
Heath Ledger?
Who played Heath Ledger? Heath Ledger, not Hugh Hefner. Heath Ledger, of course, difficult to compare yourself. And then Jack Nicholson, but even that's a very cartoony performance. So he just came along at a bad time, and they really stiffed him on it as well. He was supposed to have potentially played it in the Solo film or something else, and also if you see the Zack Snyder release of the Justice League, I thought his Joker in that was pretty amazing. Like, but maybe I'm just too much of a superhero nerd that I'll let things slide that other people really don't like. I thought he's great. I thought he was really good. He did his own thing. He was like a cool young swashbuckling Joker. He had his hair slicked back.
I think my issue with Jared Leto in regards to his portrayal of the Joker, it's not even his portrayal of the Joker, it's kind of the surrounding stuff where he was like sending people like pig heads, and do you know what I mean? Like really taking method acting too far and just being like sending people, I think it was like, I don't know, condoms with spit in it, just to like really antagonize people. And it's like it gets to the point where it's like, get out of your own arse, just like turn up. Like it's the classic
that's added an extra layer of insecurity there, because if he'd been the first to do that, people might have said, wow, he's really committed. But because was it Hugh? A lot of people, that there's apocryphal tales, not apocryphal. There's stories about Heath Ledger being in character a bit much and freaking people out, and Joaquin Phoenix notoriously incredibly methody, but that's post Jared Leto. That stinks of like other people did it, so I should do it and try and do it better. It's like he's got license to do it. So it's almost like insecure that he wanted to be super method, because that's how you play the Joker. Playing the Joker is his own thing now. It's got its own mythology, obviously. If you die playing a character, that's a tall order to fill.
Yeah, I personally, I understand, like, I almost understand people's hate for Jared Leto, because there's a lot of hate out there for him. I'm not a big fan of the music, but like, after seeing him in like House of Gucci, I just think he's fun. Like, and it is that thing of like, he does take himself way too seriously, but like him basically playing like a live action, doing like Mario's voice for Paolo Gucci is like, and him just, his line delivery in that film is fantastic. And I think this film, again, it's not Jared Leto being overtly big in any way. I think he plays that kind of fuck up in this film really well, and he plays the kind of the voice of reason and conscience fantastically well. I think like it's it's the thing. In I don't know, people who hate him, like when they watch Fight Club, go like, "Oh, I'm glad to see him get his face punched." Do you know what I mean? But I think that's just the fact that he's a very talented, pretty man. So like, but
Yeah, exactly. People just want to keep the world down. They just want to watch the world burn. He's doing a lot of the heavy lifting emotionally in this film. Nicolas Cage watches like 4 people die.
Yes.
And apart from that one where he's within like winging distance of the bullet, where he has a natural reaction to being, he could get shot as well when Andre Petit shoots that guy. Apart from that, he doesn't give very much away. He watches, including his brother, doesn't give very much. I mean, it's the most emotional out of all of them, as well it should be, after we've seen him and his brother the whole time. Jared Leto, the first time we see those people get shot, and he's watching through the gap when the lineup's being shot really early on, and it's the first time we see somebody maybe taking a stand, and Nicolas Cage is like, no. He reacts every single time anything bad happens. His face is properly lit up. He's committed. He's doing a lot of the work for us.
Yeah, and like, I think what I really care about his death in this, and obviously, like when like and what's heartbreaking about it is the fact that Yuri goes ahead with the deal and kind of like he just makes, even in the voiceover, kind of flippantly makes a remark like, seeing it as it was half the shipment, it was only half the pay, and just like goes on. It's just another day at the office for him, and then like he gets back, and like you heard in the trailer all that time ago in this episode, like he's stopped by the ATF, and he's like, "Oh, I guess it's not about the alcohol and tobacco; it's about the firearms." Why you're stopping me? Which leads us to the end of this film, and that kind of great. I love the fact that we get those snippets of like them, like Ethan Hawke and Nicolas Cage, like together. There's those kind of like to and fro's throughout it, but then it just, I don't know, it's it's weirdly like it's like a kind of sexual tension almost, but like of this kind of this tension that's built up, like, oh, I just want to see these guys go at it. Do you know what I mean? It's like that thing, but not like in a kind of like a battle of wits, and kind of really have it out. And I think that kind of that explosion we get at the end, and it is quite like mild mannered. I just want it to play a clip. I think it's a longer clip, but it is a brilliant clip of those two together in that final scene.
Are you paying attention? Or are you delusional? You have broken every arms embargo written. There is enough evidence here to put you away for consecutive life sentences. You are going to spend the next 10 years of your life going from a cell to a courtroom before you even start serving your time. I don't think you fully appreciate the seriousness of your situation.
My family has disowned me. My wife and son have left me. My brother's dead. Trust me, I fully appreciate the seriousness of my situation, but I promise you, I won't spend a single second in a courtroom.
You are delusional.
I like you, Jack. Well, maybe not, but I understand you. Let me tell you what's going to happen. And this way you can prepare yourself.
Okay.
Soon there's going to be a knock on that door, and you will be called outside. In the hall, there will be a man who outranks you. First, he'll compliment you on the fine job you've done, that you're making the world a safer place, that you're to receive a commendation and a promotion. And then he's going to tell you that I am to be released. You're going to protest. You'll probably threaten to resign. But in the end, I will be released. The reason I'll be released is the same reason you think I'll be convicted. I do rub shoulders with some of the most vile, sadistic men calling themselves leaders today. But some of those men are the enemies of your enemies. And while the biggest arms dealer in the world is your boss, the President of the United States, who ships more merchandise in a day than I do in a year,
Sometimes it's embarrassing to have his fingerprints on the guns. Sometimes he needs a freelancer like me to supply forces he can't be seen supplying. So, you call me evil, but unfortunately for you, I'm a necessary evil.
What do you make of that scene, Jordan? So for me, I think it's
it's incredible. It's incredible. It's a total flip on the obligatory scene that we would expect from two opposing sides of a war or a crime coming together. It's like it's not Seven, where he's standing there holding the head of someone in a box and Brad Pitt's there with a gun pointed at him. It is the mental gymnastics that are happening, and for it to be revealed to us that Nicolas Cage won this before he even walked into the room. That Yuri Orlov has already won this, and that's why he's always been able to make these little japes and jibes. And why he was able to sit there for 24 hours, like, this is boring, not this is death defying, or this is my life over, or like, I've been caught, that he's just another day in the office. Is amazing, that reveal, and for a little Ethan Hawke to be like, everything is built up. It's a really interesting technique as well, like cinematographically, not a word, but we'll use it, that we're seeing what they're saying played out for us visually. So you're hearing it goes back to voiceover from this meeting. They're talking to each other. Nick's Cage voiceover is used to describe something that's about to happen in 2 minutes time, which we then physically see, and they're jumping backwards and forwards between the reveal, so we know that what he's saying is true. Yes. It's not like suddenly potentially someone's going to come in. No, or it's not like Ethan Hawke could suddenly get a gun and go, well, then you have to die because you are evil, or you're right about all this, and he suddenly turns and he's the villain. No, it's just real. His fate is sealed, and Nicolas Cage is outside of fate in this regard. He's a necessary evil to the world, and money speaks louder than morals and fate and destiny. If there's money turning, if money greasing the wheels of it all, then he's indestructible. It's so amazing. It's great. It is a good closing scene, and is a nice sort of antidote to that obligatory Batman versus. I love Batman, but Batman versus the Joker action sequence where someone has to fall at the end. Neither of those two people die or are even transformed at the end. All that happens is Ethan Hawke is his character is just disillusioned a bit, and it's like, oh right, yeah, because it's real life. It's based on real events. Nobody threw anybody off a tower at the end to hide the secrets of the government. Just got to go carry on doing his job with the slight disillusionment that his own government is the people that he works for. He's got the American flag tattooed on his chest, or whatever. They're the ones that are perpetrating more crimes than this guy, this white whale that he's fished. That he's caught.
Yeah.
Does in a year. They do it. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think it's like, I think it really does. And the film at this point as well, when it cuts to that kind of postscript of it, really rams home the message of the film, that people like Yuri Orlov or Viktor Bout and stuff like that. Yeah, they are bad people, but the real bad are the people in charge. Do you know what I mean? Like they're perpetrating this and doing all the stuff that Yuri Orlov is doing, but they're doing it and we're thanking them for it, and we're kind of saying to them like, well done, and like it's our tax money that's going. Do you know what I mean? When you get that obligatory yearly breakdown of what your tax money is going towards, and it's kind of that weird pie chart, and it'll be like, oh, self like weapons and defense or whatever. It's like, yeah, we're funding these kind of shady deals to kind of arm these countries in their conflicts, and to keep us going in and stepping in and making sure we're the big swinging dicks in the kind of Western world and the free world and stuff like that. And yeah, I think that thematically, like, it's a bit, I don't know, it's a bit kind of on the nose and stuff like that. But I think, and what's scary about the film is it kind of feels weirdly timeless. Do you know what I mean? It's like, as much as this is speaking of a specific time and speaking about the time in which it was made, is still prescient today. Stuff like this is definitely happening still, not only just in the Yuri Orlov case, but in the case of our own governments being involved in the kind of perpetration of wars in other countries. And yeah, like it's all
The
icky.
opportunism will always be there. Like, just because he managed to get his hands on the Cold War residual weapons, that's not to say that that's a strange uptick in history and everything else is going to even out. He's just an opportunist throughout. If it had been a different war, if it had been the Iraq conflict that obviously is sort of still happening, but to a different extent, then yeah, you're right. It's timeless because he's just an opportunistic force for gun running. Yeah, there's no technological paradigm shift that's going to happen anytime soon that's going to make that obsolete.
Yes, yeah. Guns and bullets are still going to be kicking about. Like
People are always going to have to eat, and people are always going to have to kill each other. Yeah,
perfect. That feels like a perfect place to wrap up the conversation on the film. But as I close off, I always do some closing questions. They don't really mean anything, but they're always a bit fun. Does Nicolas Cage have bad hair in this film, Jordan?
No, looks good in this one. Really good.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's normally like the films. I don't know. People tend to say Nicolas Cage, when he has bad hair, it's a bad film. I think this one he's got it coiffed right. It suits the character, and he's looking great. This film, like, I guess with my next question, does he do a voice? Which what I mean by that is, there's films like Vampire's Kiss or Peggy Sue Got Married where Cage really puts on a voice, and this kind of had I guess there would have been a discussion at one point of, are they going to have Ukrainian accents? Like, but they steer against it. But yeah, does he do something different with his voice? And is it kind of off-putting, or is it kind of fitting with the film?
I think it's just in character for sure. Yeah, he's not he's really low gear for most of it. Emotionless, divorced from humanity naturally because of the subject matter. He's had to distance himself from it. So I don't think it's an outlier on the Nicolas Cage scale. I don't think he's doing anything unusual. It's within his wheelhouse.
Perfect. So I guess what a lot of people go to Nicolas Cage films for is a freak out. Do we get anything resembling a freak out in this movie?
No, just one time where he really caught me off guard. Right at the end, just before Vitaly dies, and he goes to sell him, and Andre Baptiste is there. He's like, "No, this isn't for me. This is for those people in the West. You're going to Sierra Leone." So he's like, "Hey, I thought I couldn't get your emails. Glad the shipment's here." And then Nicolas Cage is like, "Where's my fucking money?" Just out of nowhere. Like, all right, I get that you're angry, but that was really out of nowhere. And also, when he's talking to his parents in his house, he doesn't give people time to react to stuff in this film at all. It's like, he goes, "This is a really nice house." He's like, normally, this was what he should have done. He should have gone, "Right, so anyway, have a good time, make yourself at home. Come on, guys, go." And he's like giving him a playful kick up the arse. He goes, "Make yourself at home. Go now." It's odd. He doesn't give anyone time to react in this film. But nothing that would even register on the normal scale of freakouts.
No, definitely not. So based on this film alone, Jordan, is Nicolas Cage the greatest actor of all time?
No. He does a good voiceover, and he spends most of the other time smoking, looking, and hiding from gunshots, which he does all of those very well, but he didn't have to do very much. He just sat on his bum and did voiceover.
Perfect. So yeah, that draws us a close on Lord of War, and thank you so much for coming and raging with Cage with me, Jordan. Where can people keep up to date with you, whether it is when you're doing with comedy and stuff like that? What does 2022 look like for you? Is there lots of shows? Where can people keep up to date with those shows?
Well, I promise to your listeners that I will try to keep things Nick Cage centric, so that they don't follow me for no reason. I do a Nicolas Cage bit. There's a little bit of me doing it online. You can follow me at Tall Dark Friend across the traditional social media outlets, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc. Please, if you feel like it, you can always check out my record-breaking sitcom Transaction, which you can watch across all of Comedy Central's social media or YouTube if you fancy it. It's just me playing myself with a slightly different haircut. Nicolas Cage is not in it, but so A Tall Dark Friend, don't ask me what it means. I didn't know when I thought of it, and I don't know anymore, but that's where I am. And thanks for having me. It's so nice to be really nitpickety about stuff like normally that you just wouldn't mention to anyone because you think it was too petty. But I'm glad we got to talk about it. Thank you for having me. This is a great podcast, and I look forward to potentially speaking again if Nicolas Cage keeps making films.
I'm sure until the sun burns cold, Nicolas Cage will be making films. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast, Jordan. Again, thank you for coming and raging with Cage with me. There we have it, guys. Lord of War with the fantastic Jordan Gray. And that marks the end of Cageuary 2022. As I said in the intro, don't worry, I'll be back with some Nick Cage content throughout the year. Obviously, we have The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent coming. We have maybe The Old Way. Maybe have Butcher's Crossing. I'm sure there'll be some films he hasn't even shot that will crop up at the end of the year. Who knows with Cage? He's a sly devil. But I will be back next week, of course, with some Coppola Connections goodness, where I will be talking to Scott Murphy of the New Horror Express and 90s Action All the Time podcast, all about the 1990, I think. I can't remember. It's one of those weird ones where it was shot in the 80s and came out in the 90s. Films Rockula. With Jonathan Schwartzman as the DOP, his second ever job as DOP. It's a weird, wonderful musical comedy horror, all about a vampire who has a curse on him that every 22 years has to see the death of his loved one. And it's a weird one. We obviously get it all into that on next week's episode, so please do be sure to check that out. If you'd like to support the podcast, remember, you can head on over to patreon.com/CageInPod, where right now you can listen to episode 1 of the brand new series, Movie Brat Bros, where currently we are looking at all the films of Brian De Palma, starting with Phantom of the Paradise, where I was joined by Daryl and Jeanette Bear, and we really get into it. It's a really great episode. If you want a little tease of it, you can look at the previous episode on the feed, a little bonus episode I did, which is the first 20 minutes, a nice little morsel of that episode. And as I said, it's a lot of great fun. And I don't know, I'm kind of patting myself on the back for this concept. I think it's a cool concept to pit movie brat directors against each other. In this case, I'm pitting all of them against Francis Ford Coppola, see if he is the big king dick or if there's somebody else who usurps him in kind of having more of a legacy and impact on cinema. And but at the same time, it's all just a bit of fun and an excuse to talk about those movies. And Brian De Palma felt like a perfectly sordid place to start, and I'm having a lot of fun with these episodes. They will be fortnightly, I believe. At the moment, I'm really trying to wrap my head around recording and balancing both, but I want to keep it fortnightly. Otherwise, if I do it monthly, there is just going to be way too many. I'm just going to be doing it for ages on Brian De Palma, and I kind of want to, I don't know, I want to keep the momentum up, really, really immerse myself in all of that. But this is stuff I could have thought about off the mic and not wasted your time with it. And as I said, you can head on over to patreon.com/CageInPod to get that, and sign up for the Movie Brat Bros tier or higher, where you get access to that. And you can get access to it for as little as $3 or £2.50 a month. So it's not bad. It's the price of what? A coffee? A decent coffee? If that. Do you know what I mean? Most decent coffees are £3. So this is less than that. This is less than a pint of beer in a pub, less than a bus ticket to most places. Get on it. It's a lot of fun. support me, support these indie podcasters. We're out here trying to do our thing, and I wanted to say as well a massive thank you to everybody who had such kind words to say about the Michael Zarnowski episode. It really does mean a lot to me, and I absolutely loved that episode. I loved talking to Michael. It was kind of a bit of a dream come true in a weird way of obviously doing the Pigcast and having the guy who that film came out of his brain. So for him to dig what I was doing and wanted to come talk about it, it was a really special thing. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to rate, review, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Acast, Spotify, wherever you're listening to this right now. Give it a spanking 5 stars and a nice little review. Let me know. Who's your favourite Coppola? What's your favourite Nick Cage film? Just let me know some stuff. Let me know what you like about the podcast, what you don't. Let me know what you like. If it's a 5-star one, if you don't like something, obviously it's less than 5 stars, but give it a 5-star anyway. Let me know what you don't like. Or you can drop me an email, which is cagedinpod@gmail.com. All the socials as well, cagedinpod@. It's just at cagedinpod. What am I talking about? On Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Letterboxd. So, as always, I've been Petros Patsilvers. I've been Caged In. You've been amazing, and I'll catch you next time.